Welcome, everyone. Today's webinar, I have as a guest Christoph Kunzli from the winery Le Piane, tired today, Le Piane in Boca in Alto Piemonte. Ciao, Christoph.
Hello, Tom.
You've got the beautiful picture of your, I assume these are your estate vineyards, so your video is freezing up there a little bit.
Yeah, this is the new vineyard we are planting in Traversania. It's one of the highest points in Boca. We planted last year a little part, and now this year we will finish it 1 hectare more. So quite nice.
Is this contiguous, or is this a separate part away from your winery?
You see, it's the white part there.
Yes.
In the upper part, there are the old vineyards of Traversania, and we go towards the valley, down the valley. So to complete this plot.
Okay. Let me put up just a quick map here so people know, people that are watching today, and people also, oh, I have to get this map up. I'm sorry. We'll talk a little bit. I'll work on this map, but you are in Alto Piemonte. And I'm sorry, 1 second here. Just get this up. Okay, now I can share it. Small map, but so you're in Alto Piemonte, and I'm sure most people know, about Piemonte and where Alto Piemonte is, but just if you could just explain Alto Piemonte. We see this east-west district here. Did you see that?
Yep, of course.
Okay. And where you were in Boca? Tell me where that is on this map.
So Boca is the most eastern and the most nordic part of Alto Piemonte. So we are the highest hillsides for Nebbiolo in the Piedmont, reaching 550 meters over sea level. So it's really a bit high-hilled, we can say, and it's north from Milan and north from Turin, northeast from Turin.
Now, Boca itself, there are only a handful of producers, correct? I mean, there's how many producers are currently making Boca?
Yeah, Boca now, it's 12 producers which bottle their wine. But mostly they are very, very small. The average size for 1 to 2 hectares, and some have maybe 3. There is only one producer who has 8, and we have 11 now. So we are the biggest producers in Boca. When I came 25 years ago, Boca was quite nothing. There was two producers, no bottles, nothing very good. Okay. It was really a dramatic situation.
Yeah. I've visited you several times, and I always love this story because you're a Swiss native, and
yes,
even today, I guess you said people have said, hey, you came from Switzerland. Why didn't you go to Barolo? I mean, and I think you told me that Alto Piemonte Boca is sort of halfway between. So, and they also said, you're Swiss, you've got all the money, so you should be making Barolo. But you want to tell that story?
That was always funny, especially the producers in Alto Piemonte always ask me this, because somehow they were a bit depressed. 20 years ago, Barolo came up very much, a very big success. Which still like this, of course, and Northern Piedmont, Alto Piemonte was really a bit in the shadow of everything. Few producers, everything a bit old-fashioned. There was not really young producers were not there because everybody went to the industry to work. So it was really bad, a very, very terrible situation. And so that's why my colleague producers, they always ask me, why did you came here and not to Barolo?
Right.
And I always answer, why you are here you know, it's a nice region. So why you ask me this? You should know that it's a nice region.
Yeah, well,
But
yeah,
as you know,
if they're going to be there, they should make wine, right?
Yeah, they knew that it's a nice region, but they were depressed. It's really a big depression. So when I came, I always told my colleagues, I opened only the windows and let fresh wind in, because I came with a new mood, with a new head in this region, seeing that we can do highest quality, and that was my approach. I saw old wines of this old producers, Antonio Cerri in Boca. By case, I tasted his wines from the 70s, 60s, and they were incredible wines. So I saw that you can do highest quality in this region, and so I put my hands in this region to do it. And that's a bit the strange thing, that people, maybe also the producer, didn't believe anymore so much that it could be possible. Now it's changed. I would say 20 years after now, there are a lot of young people investing. Also, as we know, that the first Barolo guy arrived, and it's not the most unknown, with Roberto Conterno and Nervi.
Right.
So
Right.
so it seems that the Barolo guys, they got it now, that Alto Piemonte has something to give, and that's a very nice thing, of course. So everything is very helpful to grow this region to the best, because years ago it was the biggest and the most important wine region in Italy. We don't have to forget this. All the Alto Piemonte we had in 40,000 hectares, which is huge, of course. And
that's about the size of Tuscany. Sure. Okay.
Yeah, Tuscany has 52,000 nowadays, and Piedmont has 32,000 nowadays. So it was bigger than nowadays. Piedmont, the whole Piedmont, was up in the north.
Wow.
That's quite amazing. And so we lost really knowledge. We lost only the believing to this old, very old, from Roman times coming great wine region. And that's what I changed in Boca very much, and a little bit, of course, influenced the whole Alto Piemonte producers, that they get believe much more now than it was 20 years ago.
Now, when you were talking about back in the 1930s, is when there's this huge amount of vineyards planted, right?
Yeah.
Was it mostly Nebbiolo, or was it Vespolina? Was it some other varietals?
Yeah, there's of course the very big story of Nebbiolo in the whole Alto Piemonte, because it's proof that from Middle Age there were the Abbey of Cluny, Burgundy.
Okay.
They had settlements in Gemme, and they made wine from Nebbiolo. That's proved. And why they did it also, in a way, because these wines were very, very similar to the Pinot Noir from Burgundy. So I think it's clear why the Cluny, Abbey of Cluny, invested in a way in Gemme, and they came there because for them it was the wine which they knew, in a way, the same type of wine. And from there we know that it's Nebbiolo. So big story of Nebbiolo in our region. Very noble in Lessona, and all noble people in Lessona. There was the big first bottlings in the world. A lot of research on wine was coming from Lessona. It was also the wine which they drank in the dinner of opening Italy in 1861, when they founded Italy. In the dinner, they drank Lessona wine.
Really? Okay.
So that was the great wine in Italy. And Boca is a bit more east, so it was always a bit between Piedmont and Lombardy. in a bit difficult situation because always between two big plots like the France and the Austrians. Lombardy was always under the Austrians, and Piedmont more under France or Savoy.
Okay. All right.
So there's always a bit this area of Boca was always a bit unsecure to live there for noble people. so I bourgeois background means every burger, how to say, bourgeois, the advocate, the doctor, the salesman of Borgomanero, of the cities nearby, they had a boat and they made they sold it to their friends or they so small wineries, not really wineries, small scale, very high quality, but not the nobles which have more importance. So that's why Boca is a bit different in the ownership. That was the big problem when I found it, Piane, that I took over forest because everything was got to forest by industrialization. These forests belong to private people, to all these people from Borgomanero, Romagnano, and Borgosesia, and I had to make 100 purchase acts to get 10 hectares. Because all these parcels were so small, and I had to deal with all families around Boca to get their land. So that's a big problem nowadays for Boca to grow somehow. Okay. It's very, very hard to make more land and more vineyards.
Exactly. I'm going to put up a picture of your estate I took when I visited, but if you could tell people, well, we'll talk about your estate, we'll talk about the vineyards there, but also if you could just talk about Boca and the Disciplinari. What is the minimum requirement for Nebbiolo, for Vespolina, for other grapes? Yeah,
and as I told also that Nebbiolo is very important in the whole Northern Piedmont, but and especially in Boca we have counted 13 varietals in the old vineyards which still survived in Boca, and these 13 varietals they were used for field blends, which we do with our Majorina wine. Right. And then also the Nebbiolo was always blended with Vespolina to make the Boca wine, and it's still like this because the Nebbiolo is the structured wine, of course, but the Vespolina gives very nice spiciness. It's like the pepper and salt. Right. And so the aromatic side of Boca is interesting because of this. And we have Gratina, where we make a very special wine, a selection of the old vineyards, which is a very fruit-driven, concentrated, purple dark wine. Seems a wine not from Northern Piedmont, has nothing to do with Nebbiolo in style, but also Gratina we find a lot in Boca. So, and what I liked always to work with all these grapes and develop the wines according what I find nice in a way. So since 4 years we make also white wine from Erbaluce, which is another great grape of the only white grape which we have in our region. In the whole Northern Piedmont you find Erbaluce, and I found out that it's really an amazing old varietal, which can give very structured white wines also. I do it in this way, so that's why our wine is very, very special.
All right. This picture I have of your vineyard, this is Nebbiolo, correct?
Yeah, this is the view from of our first vineyard planted in '98. That's the beginning. That was and you see that's a typical vineyard house where these people who worked the vineyard in the summer, they came to stay there. They worked the vineyard, and in October they made the harvest, and they went with the grape to the town. and they left these houses. So they were real summer houses. And in front of this house, we have planted the first hectare in '98. And this is Nebbiolo, yeah, Nebbiolo, and on the edge some Vespolina to make Boca. But here, what you see is Nebbiolo, yeah.
Okay, and I would say it's very typical. People can obviously see all the trees. Alto Piemonte is a very forested area, isn't it?
Yeah, now it's very foresty, but now once everything was vineyard, like Barolo is now. So it's amazing how it changed. You see that the picture also behind me or in the background. You see a lot of forest and then some new vineyards which we planted. So 20 years ago, there was only forest in this area.
Okay.
Quite amazing.
Yeah, and you read articles about Alto Piemonte, and sort of the common concept is that, well, it's cooler up in Alto Piemonte compared to the Langhe where Barolo and Barbaresco are produced. So, you know, that's one advantage, and with climate change. And is that too simple, or is that an accurate description?
It's cooler somehow because we are near the Alps and we are higher hillside, 550 meters, and that changes a lot. But we have a very, very warm microclimate because our soil is porphyric, it's volcanic red stones, which get very warm in summer and also in autumn. When in fall, when the sun gets on, the soil is really warm, and it creates a very warm microclimate, and that's why we can have ripe grapes from Nebbiolo on a height of 550. Only in Valtellina they can do it maybe to 700 meters because it's very south exposed, like Boca, and these stones which getting warm. But we have, of course, more the winds from the north, which cool down a little bit so it's not that the summers are not that hot like sometimes in Barolo, which it can be really terribly. In Boca, there's always in the evening there's a little breeze from the Monte Rosa, from the very high mountain behind us. It's 5,000 meters, so it's one of the highest peaks in Europe. So that gives a little bit cooler climate. What is very nice in the last years, we see really that we are a bit the winners of the situation of our climate warming, because we have better years now than we had in the 60s and 70s. Old producers, they told me that the 60s and 70s were quite tricky sometimes. Means it was cool, too cold, they had problems for ripening, and they told if we could do 6 good years in 10, that was a lot.
Amazing, right?
And now we can do 9 years of 10 are very good. So that has changed. But what has not changed, and it's really a big issue now for Barolo, when I speak with my colleagues there, they have no rain. It's amazing. Last year they had no rain from May to September, and then some rains, and they could have a good harvest in the end. But it was really very, 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 very dry. We have not this problem because near the Alps we have always some storms also, which is a bit terrible because of the hailstorms. Right. But we have always rain.
You don't worry about drought,
every 2 weeks we have some rain.
Okay. Really?
So also in August, it's never so dry. And you see also the forest behind, they are green. They are very, very,
yes.
We have a lot of forest. So it's not an issue here.
Does the rain cause more problems for Vespolina or Nebbiolo, or is it really about the same?
Normally, the Vespolina don't like the rain. So I like more the warm years in the end, because they work much better for Vespolina and also for Nebbiolo. They are both grapes which they like hot weather, and also Croatina likes hot weather. So It needs a bit of rain, but not too much, and that we have this good condition still. So it's a really a good situation, I would say.
Okay. I've just put up a picture of your cellar, and people should realize,
Yeah.
haven't had your wines, you are a traditional winemaker, which I applaud.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to show you, Tom, because that you have never seen.
No, I haven't.
In time of it, we did homework, having time to be. I was always in Boca, so I could follow all this the constructions, and we did in the 2 years of COVID. We constructed a warehouse for our. A center for our agriculture machinery, and then, and that's the most important, this underground cellar, which was really needed. We had no space anymore because the Piane grew in the last years quite a lot. So we had no space in the old cellar of Cherry anymore. And now I did a big cellar of 200 meters square, which you see here. The barrels, which you remember, they were up in the old cellar.
Right.
They are now down here. The 10 big barrels to make. They are all filled up from 17, 19, 20, and 21 vintages.
Okay.
To the right, there are some. Yeah.
How large are the largest botti?
These are 3,000 liters, and I can show you if you can see it after when you go. I show you what we get last year. Okay. This one.
Okay.
This barrel, it's now in the cellar. It's an 8,000 liter.
Wow.
That's quite amazing. Yeah.
That's
and
huge.
it's which I can do even more now. The aging part even maybe longer than 4 years sometimes. So that's a great thing.
Is that Slavonian wood or Austrian wood or? This
is Slavonian. I show you another picture here.
Okay.
When they make it, they do it on the fire, like it's Slavonian oak, and then they make they bind them and they make them on fire. It's the old technique, like to make the barrels, and I like it a lot because in the first years you feel a little bit the toasting, but after you have very soft tannins in your wine from the barrel. After I put Boca only after 3-4 years in this barrel. Now there is creatina in and majorina in and other things to wash out this toasting, and then the barrels really are great in our cellar. So you have to educate your barrels in your cellar also, like children.
Okay, not many people do that, so that's a nice touch. Now, and you talked about some of these wines aging, and that you were kind enough. First or second time I visited you, we went to the local trattoria, and you took over the estate, I think, in the mid or late 1970s, or no, the 1990s, excuse me. But we had a wine from the 70s, I think, from the former owner. It was it the Antonio Cherry or?
Yeah, Antonio Cherry.
Yeah, and I remember you telling me that when you first poured the wine, it was very close and kind of cloudy, and he said just wait like 15-20 minutes, and it was just amazing how it changed. So do you remember how old that wine was? Was it some 71?
Yeah, I think it was from the 70s. We have a lot of bottles from this Antonio Cherry. They're marvelous wines. They need, of course, a lot of air, like all Nebbiolos. You have to open them and give them a lot of decant them and then give them air, which is also for our wines always a good thing. For the younger wine to get more bit riper, and for the older wine to decant them, to have no sediment, and then also the wine opens up very nicely. Okay. So I suggest always to do this with our wines. Yeah.
Okay. And how many bottles do you produce now in total?
Now we produce 70,000 bottles. We have increased a bit, but in a way, it's more the white wine, which I do 10,000 bottles of white wine. That's why it's so increased a lot. Which at the moment we purchase in the neighborhood. It's we we have more and more from our fields, but at the moment there is mostly I buy from outside.
Okay.
The production of Boca is more or less 12,000, 15,000 bottles. So 1,000 cases, yeah, more or less.
Right. We'll talk about the Boca in just a minute, but I want to start with this white wine, this Herbaluce, because I remember you telling me you're going to plant some of this, you're going to make a wine from that, and from Herbaluce. How did that all come about? And you have your first release now? Is that the first release or second release?
It was the first release was in 16, but very little quantity. It was 1,500 bottles, so it was a test. And then 17 and 18, we got to 6,000 bottles, now to 10. And it's a very different style of Herbaluce, because I believe that Herbaluce is a very structured and very full-bodied and a wine which can age also. Mostly they don't do it like this. They want acidic wines, crispy wines to drink very early, but I don't feel that that's the right thing for Herbaluce. So what I do is really the opposite. I pick ripe grapes, and then I make a full bunch press in a vertical press, like they do in Champagne. Okay. And then I ferment with indigenous yeast in big barrels of wood, 2,000, 3,000 liters, like I do with red wines. And then I do also the malolactic fermentation. So the wine is very creamy and very full-bodied, but still has a very good acidity, because Herbaluce has a very nice acidity. That's why it works well. You see, yeah, the label I have to explain, because it's a very strange thing here in
Yes.
Italy. The law, the Herbaluce can be used only in Caluso, which is a bit western part from us. Okay. It's a small region which they have a lot of Herbaluce, and they protected also the varietal. And they told, you can't write Herbaluce on your label, which is not really legal, but to change it, we have to make 10 years of processing by law, and that's a very difficult thing for our consortium. So outside of Caluso, nobody can use Herbaluce as a varietal. So why I write this very strange writing in Greek letters, Bianco, in Greek letters, right. It's not Greek, of course, it's only Greek letters, because Herbaluce is named in our region Greco, the Greek.
Oh, really? Okay, I didn't know that. All right.
Yeah, and that's why. So in Italian, you read this, Bianco in Greco. So what it is, very funny. Yeah, that's why.
And I imagine if you put Bianco and Greco, the people in Campania would be upset. So, but all right, let's talk about, and before we get to the Boca, another red wine you make called Le Piane.
Yeah,
Tell us about
it is this very special Croatina from old vineyards. It's a special selection of the best bunches, the ripest bunches, and we do this full purple, very concentrated Croatina wine. It's a very interesting wine, which is a bit more like a Syrah in a way, like Cornas or so.
And how long does that spend in wood?
2 years. 2 years in smaller barrels and in big barrels. This is the only wine which sees also some tonneau, some double barrique, and then also big barrels. Yeah.
And what's the current vintage on that?
18.
18. Okay.
Great vintage. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And what's with Croatina, just in general, what's the aging potential of Croatina versus Nebbiolo or something like that?
It's the total opposite. A lot of color, a lot of tannin, but not the fine tannin of Nebbiolo. A lot of tannin, a lot of fruit driven, blackberries, black black cherries also, and then also this earthiness. It's a grape which you find in Alto Piemonte, and it's really a total different world of Nebbiolo. And I like it somehow to make this very different wine. It seems not to be from Boca, but it is from there. So that's a funny thing. Yeah.
Is it indigenous to the area, or is it indigenous more?
It's an indigenous, which is in northern Piedmont, and some in Timorasso region, and then in Alto Piemonte. Yeah, okay. That's right.
And now let's move to Boca. And
Boca.
If you've never had it, just a couple of comments before I let you speak about it, Christoph. But I remember having it at a restaurant in the Barolo zone. We just had enough Barolo. I don't know that makes sense, that you can never have enough Barolo, but after drinking Barolo for several days, I said, I'd heard about this wine, and before I visited, I think I met you in Chicago and tried the wine, and I said, let's try this. And it's so rich, and yet it's so elegant. We had an older vintage. I don't remember the vintage exactly. This is 8-10 years ago, but it was just such beautiful structure. Everybody loved it. And tell us about this wine. This is your signature wine, and how many bottles you make, how long you've been making it, the blend, everything, how it's aged.
Yeah, that's why I'm in Boca. It came from this wine because Antonio Cherry made the same wine and in the same style as we do. So very elegant, very fine. When they get older, they are really a bit burgundy style. And what I do is the very old technique, like the guys in Barolo and the guys in Northern Piedmont, like Antonio Cherry did it. I believe that Nebbiolo is a complete grape, which means you have everything in the grape. You have enough tannins, you have enough acidity, you have a lot of flower, a lot of aromatic side. So it's a perfect grape not to be spoiled by anything. Means we do very long maceration to get everything from the grape. We macerate in open wooden barrels, indigenous yeast, just punching down by hand the wine, the skins to the bottom once a day, all handmade really. And then after 2 months in December, mid of December normally, because our harvest is end of October normally, so we are quite late. We do in December, we do this the pressing, and then the wine goes directly to the big barrels, which you have seen, and stays there 4 years, some wrecking. After the 4 years, we bottle it without any fining, without any filtering. It's just really in a very, very natural way we do this wine. So that's the Boca.
And what's the blend on the Nebbiolo versus?
Yeah, it's 85% is Nebbiolo and 15 of Vespolina. That's our blend.
And what is the disciplinarity say? What's the minimum percentage of Nebbiolo?
90% Nebbiolo, not more. And 30% of Vespolina, but nobody uses. Normally now the Bocas are from 80 to 90% is Nebbiolo, and the rest is Vespolina.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now I know you've received great press on this. It's not just one of the best wines of Piemonte, but one of the best red wines of Italy. And I know when I visited with you, you talked about you were off to a tasting or just come back from a tasting with sommeliers across Italy. And tell me about that experience.
What the sommelier? What you want to know about?
When you mentioned that you had presented Boca several times to some of the top sommeliers in Italy.
Yeah.
And I just wonder what their reaction was, how those tastings.
Okay. Yeah, it's also in the first years, when Boca was not known, people were always a bit they saw, it's a new Nebbiolo. Oh, that's interesting. But it was not a new Nebbiolo. I always tell, no, this is a very old Nebbiolo.
Right.
And
right.
it has a lot of history and a lot of aging. And now I think really what I hear a lot, what they tell, which is maybe never so good to make this comparison with other wine regions. But a lot of times when I open my wines, also without how to say, not looking what it is, somebody always tells that it's a bit like Burgundy, and somehow it's true. When they get older, they really get very silky, very elegant, very aromatic, balsamic notes, red berries, and it is something which goes towards a little bit of to Burgundy, at least on the first glance. After, maybe they're quite different, because the tannin structure is a bit different from a Pinot Noir for me. But a lot of sommeliers tell this a bit when they taste our wines. Of course, our wines can age very well. I always tell, at least 10 years you
Right.
should wait, and then 10 to 20 years maybe is the best to drink them. But they can keep even longer,
Okay.
as we know.
Yes, and now the current vintage is 2018.
No, 17. I just
17.
released, because after 4 years.
Okay.
And I will release the 19 before the 18.
Interesting.
In September, after 3 years, because the 19 is very charming, but a bit lighter style. So I don't want to age it too much in the wood.
Okay.
So 3 years, which is okay for Boca DOC, and then it goes to the market. In the 18 is the best vintage ever made in Boca.
Well, that's great
by ourselves. So and it's a very long aging wine. So I leave it another year in the bottle. Then we bottle it this year, but we will sell it only in 23 or 24.
Okay. Yeah, I just did a webinar a few days ago with 3 producers from Barolo, and of course 18 is their current release. Yeah. And they talked about 19 coming up as a very powerful vintage. So it's it's
strange. 19 here, and it's not always the same. I have to tell that not always we should comparison to make from Barolo to us. For example, 17 in Northern Piedmont was a great year.
Okay, 1 second, Christoph. Could you only have half your head in the picture here, so there you go. Perfect.
Yeah.
Okay.
17 was a great year, for example, because we had some rain. It was never so hot.
Okay.
In Barolo, it was tricky. 21, the same. We had an incredible year last year, maybe the best ever made, with alcohol degrees of 13, not even more. It was amazing, but fully ripe grapes. And in 19, we had a bit of rain in the harvest time, and that made a little bit the problem. So for me, the 19 is a bit the lighter style wine. It's not a huge wine like in Barolo. So we have to learn that to look these 2 regions a bit different, with different eyes. Every it's not always the same.
Sorry about that with the phone.
Yeah.
I'm unavailable to answer your call right now.
And
leave a message, and I'll get back to you as soon
how about
as
2020? How was that vintage?
Okay. Yeah.
The 20 vintage, how did that compare with 19 and 21? 2020.
The 20 is very nice vintage, very crispy, very good fruit, very with a lot of energy. I like it a lot. It's a very typical Boca style wine, with a lot of red fruit popping up, but very elegant, very, very fine. The 21, as I told, seems an amazing fruit with only 13 alcohol, but fully ripe. Very, very fine tannins, very really ripe tannins, okay. Which make this wine amazing. So I think it's an amazing vintage, which we did in 21. harvesting from 25 to 29 of October, so very late.
Very late. Okay.
Yeah.
And finally, this year, 2022, I know that in the Barolo zone, not terrible weather, but very unusual weather. No snow, no rain.
Yeah.
For the whole winter and
Yeah,
spring.
we had the same till March. We had no rain from December to March. But now, as always, we are now near the Alps, so we got some rain, and it's very normal now. Now it's really no problem anymore. The vines are very in front. They are growing very fast because they have this little bit of water. They took it immediately, of course, and the weather is very, very, very warm. So it looks very nice at the moment. So hopefully that could be the best.
Fingers crossed. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, great. It's I have to get back. It's a shame. I talked to Christoph before we started here, and I'm going to be in Piemonte in a couple of weeks, but he's going to be in France, so we're not going to be able to.
Yeah,
connect,
because sometimes I like to go to my friends in France because I like French wine a lot, not only Italian, and I go often also to France to see some wineries, which to learn, to see what they do.
Absolutely.
And especially the white wine. I was learning a lot in France because they have a very good approach to white wine, especially, I would say. So
yeah, there's some nice white wines made. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah.
Of course, there's some great white wines made. White wines made in France. So, but it's always a pleasure to talk with you. Hopefully, we'll connect next time. But and I'm excited.
I hope
to try the Bianco.
Hope to see you next time in Boca again. Yeah.
Absolutamente, sí. Okay.
Well, so we leave each other.
Thank you. Okay. Ciao.
Thank you very much. Ciao, ciao.